way, we'll just say, yeah, Ruby said it was great. Or if it's like renowned for being the best in Georgia, then it'd be crazy not to, really, just to make a special trip. That's what it's going to be. It's just going to be one or two key points, big highlights, and then we're just traveling in between.
Wonderful.
And a lot food orientated, which will be really fun.
Yes, that's where I have the bulk of my recommendations, all around the food.
Awesome. Love it. So anything that's really good, old-fashioned Southern cooking and all that stuff. Yeah. Any thoughts? Give us a shout.
Will do. Welcome, everyone. So I didn't tell you, but I just hopped into our live already.
Oh, yeah, so you did. So sneaky, Ruby. So sneaky.
It is Monday morning here in sunny San Diego, and I am joined by Dr. Nick Thompson, who many of you know as the Holisticvet UK. Welcome, Nick. Thank you for being here with me today.
Ruby, it's always a pleasure to see you. We've just been speaking for a few minutes beforehand, and it's great to hear your plans for the next few months. And I wish you well with all of those. I hope it all goes exceptionally well.
Thank you. Very excited. Also very excited for this fall's Feed Real Summit. FRS 24 is this October, also in San Diego. And Dr. Nick is going to be one of our phenomenal speakers that I'm so excited for, because you're finally coming stateside and all of your RPM fans get a chance to see you here.
I really can't wait. It's I think it's 5th and 6th of October. We're going to be in San Diego. I don't even know how much I'm doing any speaking. I think I've got at least one lecture, so I've got at least an hour on my hind legs to share some goodness with everybody there. Really looking forward to being in California and speaking to people from all over the States. I think you guys are doing really well in the raw space and the real food space, and I'm sure I'm gonna learn as much as I share, and it's really going to be great. Connor's coming with me, and we are going to hit you guys like a ton of bricks. You're going to love it. He's going to give you the big Irish thing. I'm going to give you the very, very English thing. And between us, we'll give you just a little slice of the United Kingdom. So it's going to be real fun. So it's going to be fun. We're going to eat some fantastic food. But most importantly, we're going to be talking about food, and we are going to be working out how well we're doing, how we can improve with what we're doing, how we can improve education of everybody. And so I think it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to share the love, to really bring people together. I think that's so important. The last 3 years have taught us that isolation is just the worst thing in the world for human beings, and people coming together in joy and love to share health and promoting the very wellness of their dogs could not be better. And for themselves as well. Food is food is food. Whether you're feeding the dog or the kids or the grandpa, then it's all good. Food is at the heart of really good health.
Yeah, so that's right. I think a lot of people found that our summit last year was helpful because everyone talks about food, but nobody knows how to integrate that into their life. And so my goal for the summit, and also for our conversation today and talking about foods for longevity, is how can we practically add that into our daily lifestyle? It doesn't have to be as hard and complicated as I think many people perceive it to be, because right now, a lot of the information out there seems very new. It's not new. It's actually ancient things that our ancestors have been doing for centuries, thousands of years, but it seems new now. And it's like, how do we go from this fast pace, convenience, fast food lifestyle to just really, pulling back and thinking, it's actually quite simple. It's easy to add these things into our life. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that today.
Ruby, you're so right. If you want to think about it really easily, you've got to think, right, what did my grandparents, what did my grandmother, grandfather, what did they eat and how did they feed the dog? And, you know, you can't really go far wrong thinking along those lines, okay? Uh, Back in the day, there were no products that had a list of 27 ingredients, the last 4 of which you couldn't even read because they're chemicals. They were eating really great food, often from the land. They were locally sourced. You knew the farmer, you knew the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and there was a community spirit there. And again, this drives to the let's all get together, let's look after each other, and let's learn together. And so, very simply speaking, your question was, you know, how can we simplify feeding pets? And the answer would be to keep it simple and move back to those absolute basic fundamentals. I can go into more detail if you like, but I just thought, yeah, let's just have like a big picture to start with before we go into a little more detail.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we should start broad. Before we dive into it, I'd like to welcome all of our guests. Where are you guys all tuning in from? I know, well, Karen's in here. Karen's in the UK. I know she's in your part of the world. There's Janet.
Karen Reed.
Yes, Karen Reed.
She's great. Yeah, she's great.
We've got Janet, who hasn't shared quite yet. Tonya from Norway, Pennsylvania, Los Angeles, New York. Wow, we've got quite the international audience. And if you guys haven't seen Nick before, you've definitely seen his Facebook or Instagram account, which is Holisticvet UK. And you've got a clinic as well, a Holisticvet clinic out at, tell us where it is.
So just near Bath in England. And we work out of here. We do international consultations with people, mainly based around nutrition. So see a lot of itchy dogs, a lot of dogs with gut problems, or maybe sometimes just, you know, healthy dogs where the owner says, am I getting it right? Please help me to just tinker. Teach me how to not need you. They won't say that, but I will say that to them. I always say to my clients, the best vet is the vet you don't need to talk to. Okay. And so if I can teach people, just teach them the basics, then they can go on. They've got the pieces of the jigsaw and they can make up that picture themselves. And that's what I'm really, really keen to do. That's the whole education piece. And so that's really important. So we do a lot of mentoring for people who've got sick dogs or not sick dogs, and that's really, really good. Every month I'll see people at the one of the local clinics. I go there and I have face to face for those cases where I need to see skin, I need to see ears, I need to look the owner in the eye to find out exactly what's what. But we will go through a medical history from the veterinary surgeon. I will write back to the veterinary surgeon saying this is what we're doing, la la la, and I have an extensive questionnaire that people go through so that I can read all this data before we speak, and it means that when I start the consultation, we both are running together because I've crammed all this information about the case. And so I've got a lot of knowledge at my fingertips. We've got all the information is digital, so we can search notes and what have you. Because very often, Ruby, if you look at the history, it will show you some of the key elements of what's happening in the present, even 4, 5, 6 years ago. So we look at in forensic detail. We look at the whole dog, the whole history, the questionnaire in order to get down to the nitty gritty. So it's exciting. It's a wonderful journey, and I meet people daily who are really committed to the health of their dogs, and it's fabulous working. It's my happy place, really, is consulting with people.
It's wonderful that,
It's
although we're
great.
having these in-person events, you coming out stateside to San Diego this October, the internet has connected us in a way that we never imagined at
Yeah,
all. And so to be able to do those consultations, next day and have those conversations about things that people can change on their own without having to drive all the way or fly all the way to you just to learn
yeah.
that. It's changed the game.
Yeah, it totally changed the game. Yeah, I think COVID did that. It made us realize that actually the world is a very small place, and Zoom and StreamYard and all these things allow us to communicate. Just, this is things. When I was a kid, you would, and to have this strange thing called a mobile phone, you can talk to I can talk to you while I'm riding a horse
Right.
in near Bath in the hills, and you can be on the beach. It's like George Jetson type crazy sci-fi. We're living in it now, and it's facilitated those who want to talk together to be able to talk together. We don't need to be isolated. So great. I love
Yep,
it.
yep. Well, so after this live or towards the end of it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share links to your site. So if we have some of our audience that do want to do a consultation with you, they know how to reach you.
For
Um,
sure.
just for our crowd here, as you know, for our lives, we typically go about 30 or 40 minutes chatting. And if you have any questions about anything that Nick shares with us today, please drop them in the comments. We will address as many of them as we can towards the last 20 minutes. And this live is going to be reposted so you can revisit it a little bit later. Yeah, so let's do it. So let's dive
Okay.
in for longevity. Tell us everything you
Okay. 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 In 30 minutes. Okay. So it's impossible to answer that question. So why don't we do? I'm just going to take. I've just written a list of things to consider adding to the lifestyle, but I've written also, and it's actually a longer list of things to subtract from the lifestyle. Yeah, when you go to the vets, you're always given something. It's tablets or drops or food or something like this. It's always adding. Whereas with the cases that I see, it's very often that you need to add a certain number of things, but you also need to subtract a certain number of things from that lifestyle. So on my things to add, very simply, because I can talk all day about things that you can add to the diet, I would say, for me, now, can I assume that everybody's feeding raw, or are there people who are kind of raw curious? They're feeding kibble, and they haven't really had the courage. And it does take courage. Everybody who starts raw is terrified for the first month. I'll just tell you now.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you go on, let's really ask real time our audience.
Okay.
I have a feeling we have primarily raw feeders here, but we might have a few curious people. So if you guys can drop in the comments, that will really help us shape our discussion for today, specifically for you. But let's assume we have a healthy mix of the both.
Okay, so we've got raw feeders, we've got kibblers who are on the fence, otherwise they wouldn't be listening to us. Okay. So if you're feeding raw, there's a couple of things. There's a few things. I've done a video. It's called Raw Feeding the Basics. I imagine most people watching today are beyond the basics. But if you're not, if you maybe in your first year and you think, I've got, I think I can do it, but how do I progress? Am I covering all bases? I've done a video. It's called Raw Feeding the Basics. You can see it on Vimeo. You can see it on my website, holisticvet.co.uk. I'm not doing that to plug the video. I'm doing it every day people email me and say, thank you so much for doing this really simple, straightforward, ABC guide to feeding raw. It's 10-minute lessons. Okay. So you can do 10 minutes and then think, oh my God, what did he just tell me? And you can repeat it 20 times if you like. And then you go to chapter 2 and you can do that. Or if you're feeling good, you go through it until you find something interesting. And you go, aha, that's great. I never realized it. And then you carry on through the whole thing. If you're good, you can do it in an hour and a half, an hour and 40, all in one go. Okay, so it's the size of a short-ish movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I've put it all in there. You're welcome to it if you'd like. If you're beyond that, God bless you. Well done, you, for progressing. But one of the things that I would let's just go through the things that I would add to a basic raw food diet. So in the UK, we have a lot of 80-10-10 offerings, whether it's venison 80-10, beef or chicken or lamb or whatever it might be. And they're usually, so they're 80% meat and 10% bone and 10% organ. The organ is a very, very, very important part of it. You may think kind of, oh, it's a bit icky and what have you. You can't see it because it's minced in with the 80-10-10. That 80-10-10 will be about 80 or 90% of the bowl. And I've given a range there because it depends on the dog, depends on their activity level, it depends on whether they like it or not, depends on so many things. So 80, so if you imagine we've got the bowl here and 80-90% is 80-10-10, muscle meat, organ meat, bone, ground into the mince itself. Okay, so we're just dealing with that. It's like one slice of pizza out of a whole pizza. Okay, so within that, I would suggest that we put in green vegetables. Green vegetables essentially come in two types. They come in the stuff that grows above the ground and the stuff that grows below the ground. Yeah, this is storage organs, so it tends to be pretty sugary. It's like parsnips or beets or carrots and things. And I tend to leave these alone because what happens is carnivores, our dogs are carnivores. Carnivores eat herbivores. Herbivores eat the stuff above the ground, the greens above the ground. Okay, pigs might go in below the ground a little bit, but that's not going to be a major part of your diet for years and years and years. So what I tend to do, and for years, Ruby, I've been saying, this is my little sign for green, which helps me focus my mind. Okay, so I'm waving at you, but I'm doing my greens. This is greens, yeah, the stuff that grows above the ground. So for years, I've been saying, take those greens. So we're talking, we call them spring greens over here. We're talking broccoli, cabbage, spinach, anything that's green and in season and organic, if you can possibly get it as clean as possible. If you can grow it in the back garden, so much the better. Okay. And for years, I've just been saying, right, put it in the blender, mix it up, put in a few other things that we'll discuss shortly, and add it to the bowl. I'm beginning to move towards just very lightly steaming those greens. You can do them all in one big batch twice a week, so it's not so much of a pain to do. Okay, so lightly steam those greens, then you put them in the blender to blend up, or fermented greens. You know how sauerkraut and kimchi and these things are becoming so much more popular. You can find recipes online. You don't want to go for the heavy salt preparations, but a little bit of salt is not a bad thing, because what we want is some breakdown of that plant material. I read a wonderful book called The Carnivore Code by Paul Saladino. And basically he says, listen, guys, plants don't want to get eaten. Animals don't want to get eaten. And when they don't want to get eaten, they go running off. Plants can't run away. And so they just try and make themselves toxic. Okay.
Sure, build some sort of protective layer that makes
That's
it
right. Yeah, they will induce secondary metabolites which can be toxic, like oxalates, for example. You know, phytoestrogens, all these things. They're not going to do the eater of the plant any good. So if we can get around those defense mechanisms by lightly steaming, that breaks down many of these compounds, or fermentation, where lactobacilli will do that breakdown for us. Not only are we liberating nutrients, which helped with longevity. Longevity is all about taking as many good elements in and trying to steer clear of the bad elements. So if we can do that, that's a good thing. So for me, steaming is where I'm at, and fermented green vegetables. You can even buy them in the supermarket over here. Yeah, if you can't get them in the Walmart, you'll be able to get them in the local Polish shop, or these kind of places. Okay, where they really know how to eat. Yeah. The Middle Central Europeans, they still have a massive tradition, as you well know, in how they preserve, how they eat a very healthy old-fashioned diet. Yeah, even in the States, having sauerkraut with your hot dog. Yeah, is that still a thing, or is
It's
it
still a thing.
a
Yeah.
slightly old? It's like what your grandpa would have with his hot dog.
I think that the popularity has come and gone over the last decade, but it is really coming back. And more than anything, depending on what area of the States you live in, shopping locally, supporting your local rancher or farmer, and really lessening that time that it takes from the farm to your home. If you can just get that directly from the person that raised those crops, it's far more popular. And I think people are understanding that fresh food is not conducive to mass production. It's just
totally
yeah.
Totally on the same page. Michael Pollan, he's a US writer, extraordinary writer. He's written several books. He's The Omnivore's Dilemma and a number of other books. And he says that the average food product on the average supermarket anywhere in the States has at least 1,500 food miles in it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you got to be, it's not ideal. Why transport something all that way when you can just go to Farmer Jones down the road and get something? And if you know Farmer Jones, it's in his interest to produce something good, so that he maintains that custom. It tastes good. It's got hasn't been sprayed, if at all possible. We can talk about sprays and longevity. That's a big topic. So
yeah. Well, it
getting
just before you go on, we've talked about greens. We did have our audience comment in. It looks like we've got almost all raw feeders. So this might be a slightly more sophisticated audience that's ready for the deeper dive.
Okay, great. So let's do the deeper dive. So you've heard all that before, guys, so I'm not going to bore you. So what I would say is in the there's a couple of things that I'm going to say. One is fish oils. You probably know about that, but I'm going to tell you about just a few thoughts on that. And the other thing is NHS. In the UK, we have the National Health Service. Some people call it the National Death Service, but that's a political hot potato. Let's call it the National Health Service, because there's a lot of really wonderful people within the National Health Service. And we use that acronym NHS to say nuts, herbs, and seeds, because again, we go back to our model of herbivores. So carnivores eat herbivores, herbivores eat whatever they can get hold of in the plant world, which is nuts, herbs, and seeds. Yeah, because we're taking care of the greens anyway. Okay, so rats and mice and these little skunky things, they'll be eating like nuts and things. They will be eaten by carnivores. Herbs are eaten by rabbits and mice and what have you, and seeds eaten by mice and rabbits and all of these things. So if that has been part of the diet for millions of years, then it's only logical that if we can emulate that. So NHS, nuts, herbs, seeds. So let's talk about that. Nuts, if they're soaked overnight, we reduce anti-nutrients. That's a really great idea. Anything you like, as long as it's not a macadamia. Okay, so you get your hazelnuts, you get Brazil nuts, whatever. Soak overnight, and then you put them into the blender to produce this kind of smoothie that you'll add to your 80-10-10.
Are we soaking them overnight for the same reason we are?
Anti-nutrients, yeah. Okay. It's belt and braces. You can probably feed them straight, but why, soaking overnight is costless and easy. And if you can reduce anti-nutrients by 2%, then that's possibly enhanced longevity. buy something similar. Yeah. Avoid
Yep.
the bad guys, embrace the good guys is got to be a great way to look at longevity. So nuts. So anything but macadamia. No macadamia, guys. If you can afford to feed your dog on macadamia nuts, A, you're doing it wrong, and B, you're earning far too much money and you really need a consultation with me. Okay? Give me your money. Okay? So I'm just trying. I don't want your money. Okay? Just stop feeding macadamia. Okay? I think jokes are great because they kind of make you think. So any nuts soaked, no macadamia. Next one is herbs. Anything you like. So Simon and I'm an Americanophile. There's probably a more elegant way of saying that. And Simon and Garfunkel, we were raised as kids with Simon and Garfunkel, and one of the songs, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. I think it's called something fair. Anyway, you know what I mean. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. That's kind of an easy way to know it, because everybody who's of an age will remember the song, and that's a great place to start. With sage, for example, in Scandinavia, they say, "Don't come and tell me you're sick if you have sage growing in the garden." Okay, that's how powerful it is.
Mhm.
Garlic is also really, really wonderful. The Italians say eating garlic is like having 10 mothers. Yeah, because it looks after you so beautifully. Okay, and it's because these herbs have been used for thousands of years, and they develop their own personalities within food, within health, within all these ancient traditions. So coming back to herbs, so you get your nuts, so you get your herbs, anything you like. If you've got a dog who's got epilepsy, then I'd go easy on the rosemary. As far as garlic is concerned, one reasonable clove, not a bulb, but a clove. Yeah, a little moon crescent section of garlic. I would go one of those per 30 kilos. So if you've got a Labrador, about 30 kilos, that would be fine every day for the rest of their life. They can go with that. That's not an excessive dose. And so it means that if you've got a 10-kilo dog, you just give 1/3 of that. Okay. Always crush it. There's a chemical called allicin within garlic, and that is liberated when it's exposed to oxygen. Okay, so you crush it. Also means you can get the peel off. I'm not going to tell you guys how to peel garlic. I did it wrong for many years, and then my beautiful, amazing wife taught me how to peel garlic properly. Okay, so I'm not going. Maybe in San Diego we can talk about the best way to peel garlic. But garlic.
I have a quick
Little
question on that. You know, there's a
uh-huh.
thought that many dogs participate in selective feeding, in that,
Uh-huh.
you know, they might not touch raw garlic. And
Uh-huh.
so if they do that, does that mean they don't need it? They just don't
Mm-hmm.
want it, and we've got to figure out a way to get it into their food somehow? How do you handle those dogs?
I think that's an impossible question. I think that there are those in the zoopharmacognosy camp who would say never force anything on your dog, allow them to choose. I just think most people haven't got the time. What you can do is rather than say with garlic, because it's really strong flavor, what you can do is, if you want to see, is the dog going to be good for it? Or maybe they're going to be good for a month, is that you can, rather than uh, blending it into your mix, your smoothie mix that you pour on, you can just crush the garlic, small dog, a third of a clove, Labrador, 30 kilos, a whole clove, and just put it to one side of the bowl, so that if they want it, they can take it. Yeah, because most people don't have the time every day to line up 10 bowls, one bowl with garlic, one bowl with fenugreek, one bowl with fennel,
Sure.
one bowl with spirulina. Yeah, who's got the time to do that? Yeah, so if you actually partition the bowl a little bit, I'm not saying on Instagram, you see these amazing bowls. They look like a work of art. Forget that. That's basically they're trying to make you feel bad because you haven't got time. When I make the dog's food, it looks more like a Jackson Pollock than than a Picasso. You know what I mean? Okay. It's just
Agreed. Yeah.
feed. Okay.
I
It's
use
just
I use the
busy.
hashtag ugly food bowl club because
Cool.
it's
Yeah. It's good because I think some people feel guilty if they're not producing a Picasso every night with their food bowl. They think, oh my God, I'm a deficient dog mom, dog dad. Okay. But actually, it's good. I think just chuck it in. That's what it's going to look like within about 60 seconds when it hits their stomach. So why not just start the process in the bowl? It's absolutely cool. Dogs are absolutely great. If you've chosen the food well and appropriately, and if your dog likes chunky minces, you go chunky, and if your dog likes fine mince, you go fine. Then I think you're pretty much good to go.
agreed.
Coming
Gucho
back to
Sale says,
yeah,
sorry, real quick,
sorry,
because this is a really good comment.
sure.
She says, we practice zoo pharmacognosy. My
Mm,
dogs always choose. However, recently we found a tick post hiking, and I did
mm,
smush it into his food, which I think is to say every dog is different. And if you have the need for something that your dog might not be too fond of,
mm,
generally
mm.
feeding it is not going to hurt.
Yeah, I think it's a big discussion. If I ask my kids, do you want broccoli? Guess what they say? But if I just serve it, they have it. It's good. It's good for them. Lightly
Right.
steamed, lightly steamed. Um, and so I think that the watchword would be you don't want everything all the time. After I've just said you can give garlic for life, you can give garlic for life, okay? Because it's pretty gentle and very healthful. But
Mhm.
generally speaking, Mother Nature has 4 seasons, yeah, and she does that because there's going to be an excess of berries in the autumn. There's going to be lots of bunnies in the spring. There's going to be lots of fat antelope during the grazing season in the summer, and what have you. And there's not going to be much of anything during the winter. That's called um, the environment shaping the food choices you are able to give. So the opposite of that approach would be, my dog really likes the chicken from such and such a company, so I'm just going to feed chicken for the rest of the dog's life. I think that's a really bad idea, because then you're into the Hills and Royal Canin type mantra, where here's your adult maintenance. You go on it when you're a year old, and you go until you're 7 years old. And that for me is the antithesis of health and longevity. Which mammals, or which animals of any description, even insects, don't eat the same thing every single day because of this seasonality? So I
Right.
think that if we can think about waves, there are cycles, there are waves within nature. Always, the seasons, the moon, the weather, the tides, all these things. Mother Nature never sits still. She's always just nudging and having these cycles, which is a wonderful thing. So coming back, NHS, nuts, herbs, we've done those to death. So let's do seeds. So seeds are really, really great. You can even sprout seeds. Anything that you can eat sprouted, you can give to the dog sprouted. It's a dead easy process. We can talk about it in San Diego. You can look online. It's a very, very simple process. Smell it before you ever give it to the dog. If it smells like it's rotten or something, just you have to chuck it. But if it smells clean and kind of green and vibrant, then it's good to go. You have some for your lunch, you give it some to the dog, you put it into the blender, and you blend it down. The only other thing I would add there, and this is a big one for longevity and for general health, would be marine oils. I say marine oils, not fish oils, because within marine oils I would also include algal oil, krill oil,
Mm.
but also from fish. We took herring and sardine and salmon, not farmed salmon, wild salmon where possible, salmon, pollock, anchovy, whatever you can get a hold of. The key thing though is with those oils, because they oxidize very readily, what you need to do is just keep them in the fridge. So buy enough. Yeah, if you've got 20 Rottweilers, you'll need a gallon. If you've got a Chihuahua, you'll just need a tiny little bottle. Get enough for the month so that at the end of the month, you've run out. You can then rebuy a nice fresh pot of something slightly different, so that again we have this cyclicity. Mother Nature likes cycles, so who are we to do anything else? I heard a lovely quote today saying words to the effect of to tame Mother Nature, we must emulate her, or something. Yeah, it's that idea, is that, you know, we're pretty clever human beings, arguably, but Mother Nature has been doing it an awful lot longer. So I think we need to maintain humility in the face of these natural processes and try and emulate that as much as possible. You'll notice that with our own diets, the more we move into ultra processed, super duper colorful, super flavorsome, long shelf life foods, the more ill health we see, and the more we move to good old fashioned mom and pop, grandpa, grandma foods, then the better our health becomes. It just kind of stands to reason. So so there you go. NHS. So we've got our 80-10-10, we've got our NHS, and we've got our marine oils. And really that would, for me, would be the basics of what you add to the diet. Now you can diversify, you can start thinking about chlorella and spirulina, and you can think about bee pollen, and, you know, all sorts of wild and wacky things as well. But you've got to have that foundation on which to build the construction of longevity and health. That for me is an absolute key. The other thing is good snacks. Sorry.
Really quickly, because we could probably talk forever.
We could talk forever, and we will in San Diego.
Yes, we will. I see a bunch of questions coming in that I want to start bringing up on the screen. I just I want you to be able to touch on things that we should avoid if we can. So for those that are sending in your questions, thank you for that. Stick with us. We are going to get to them in about 5 more minutes. I wanted to circle back to garlic because this is such a hot topic, as you know, but this person's asked, how about garlic and anemia? People are so afraid when I say that they can feed it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Bashak, I know her. She is a Turk who lives in Estonia, and she's powerful lady who's very, very keen, is a raw feeder, and is driving things very strongly in Turkey and in Estonia. So we kind of went through it in that, let's go back to the beginning. The reason people are scared of garlic is there was a paper where they gave, I think, they gave absolutely crazy, you know, kind of 20 times the dose to dogs, and they found that they got this thing called Heinz body anemia. It's just the sulfurous elements within the garlic knock out your red blood cells, and you lose red blood cells. Totally reversible if you stop the garlic, but you've got to feed crazy quantities of garlic before you even get there.
In that study, the garlic was administered by nasogastric tube. It was so much garlic. There's no way that a dog would consume that willingly in one sitting. You would literally, and they literally had to force feed them by using a nasogastric tube. So
because they refuse it, there's the zoopharmacognosy kicking in. You know, there's only so much even a Frenchman would take, of garlic. Okay, so we just come back from Paris and we had a wonderful time. I love French food. So they did the study and they gave crazy quantities of garlic, and they got sick dogs. And then they said, oh, garlic's really dangerous. But I would suggest that if you gave crazy quantities of anything, including water, you'll find that it's got a toxicity.
Sure.
Okay. So therefore, one average sized clove for 30 kilos, and you break it down. If you've got a 60 kilo Rottie or Mastiff or something like this, you can go 2. Okay. Because that quantity in that size of dog, it will do no harm, and it will have an infinitely beneficial effect. Remember, garlic is like having 10 mothers, according to the Italians. And so, yeah, I reject the garlic if fed in moderate quantities. I think is very healthful. It's antiviral, it's antibacterial, it thins the blood in a good way. It helps to repel fleas and ticks. There is no downside to it. If people are scared, it's because their vets have heard from someone who's heard from someone, or they heard it at vet college. Oh, garlic is toxic. Okay, it's because of this crazy study way back. But since that time, we in the raw feeding community have been feeding garlic for years and years and years, and I have never seen Heinz body anemia ever. And I've been in veterinary medicine 37 years now. Never seen Heinz body anemia. Okay, so
No.
so there you go. My kind of introduction. I've got a whole big long list of things to subtract. Do you want me to just run through that very quickly, and then we can jump into some questions?
I love that. Good idea.
Okay, I'd rather talk to people than at them. But here's my list of things to subtract. UPF, ultra processed food. There's a Brit called Chris Van Tulliken, and he's written a book that you'd love, Ruby. It's called Ultra Processed People. Easy book title to remember. Ultra Processed People. It's great even for a holiday, because he's got a very, very light style. So avoid ultra processed food. If you're feeding raw food, but then you have bonios, schmackos, anything with more than one ingredient, I'd say forget it. What we want as snacks is just dried. Yeah, meat dried, tendon dried. That's it. It's beef tendon, full stop. That's it. It's really simple. One ingredient. That's where you need to be. Okay, so I've put down avoid ultra processed food, and there's a reference for you. I said just avoid terrible, crappy, horrible snacks. Okay, they look great, and when you're in the pet store, you think, oh, Chico, they'd really love those. No, they wouldn't. They would like some real product where when you turn the package around, you say, wow, that's great. They've got no additives, no preservatives. In the States, they put in bacon flavoring into everything. It's like, give me a break. It's a beef tendon. It's got plenty of flavor on its own. So one ingredient, that's it. I will stop about that. The things that we need to subtract is we need to be really judicious. We need to be very careful about how we're using wormer. Most adult dogs that I come across do not need a wormer. They've gone years and years and years. We're doing worm counts on a regular 2-3 month basis. They're clean as a whistle for years and years and years. We do the worm count so that if for some reason they do get some worm count, we can be ahead of that. Flea and tick products. Now, in the southern states of America, you have like phenomenal flea problems, so this may not be quite so applicable, and there is a lot of places where they get a lot of ticks and things, so again, it's not so applicable then. But you just be careful that the products that we use on ourselves, on our dogs, because the dogs get it a whole lot more than we do, unless we shoot deer a lot or something like that. We are putting these pesticides on like every single month. Imagine taking your kids and dousing them with pesticide every single month. That's what you're doing with your dogs. And if they don't need it, just don't do it. Okay. Have a chat with your vet, have a chat with your groomer, have a chat, with your friends to find out how much of these are problems in your part of the world.
Well, and I think one thing to
Mm.
add to that, if you go
Mm.
to the CDC's website, there's a map that has the true occurrence of some of,
Okay.
where these fleas or ticks might be located. And so if you
Mm.
don't live in one of those areas where there's a high occurrence of flea bites, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
then you probably don't need to be applying that every year or every month rather.
Yeah, totally. It's a bit like all children get lice, head lice. Yeah, all
Sure.
children sooner or later, before the age of 10, 12 years old, they're going to get head lice. Do we dose them with pesticide every month for that 1 or 2 month period when they're 6 or 7 years old, when they're going to get it? No, we don't. We stand back, we watch. If they get infected, then we will treat it. Hopefully we will use natural products where at all possible. We definitely don't nuke them every single month with these neurologically active
Mhm.
neurologically active products, the things like NexGard, Brevecto, and other brands that you've got in the States that we don't have here. They in 2019, the FDA came out and said they're neurotoxic. Okay. Now, maybe they've got a place if your dog has got horrendous demodectic mange or sarcoptic mange or horrendous flea infestation and you're in Orlando in Florida or something like that. But to be avoided. Yeah.
Yep.
Drugs. I haven't got a problem with drugs, but just because you've got the drugs and the drugs are there doesn't, drugs are great, but you wouldn't want them on your cornflakes. Actually, you wouldn't even want cornflakes, but that's a whole other conversation that we can have in San Diego. Okay. That was invented by an American, Dr. Kellogg. Yes, back in the day. That's a very interesting conversation
It is.
we must have. Yeah. Don't mention young boys up to no good. Okay.
Mhm.
Vaccines. Vaccines. I'm not anti-vax, but in the WSAVA say that the distemper, hepatitis, and parvo, which is the main core vaccines, they can last up to a lifetime. Yeah. So why are we giving them every year or every 3 years when we can do a titer test? Yeah. You take a blood test and you'll be able to see how many antibodies are in the bloodstream from the last time they had either the vaccine or some just incidental exposure. So I think we need to think again about vaccines. Really happy to talk to people about this in San Diego or before. We can talk again, Ruby. No problem whatsoever. Glyphosate.
Mm.
Glyphosate is absolutely everywhere. There was a study, I think, last year in the States where something like 84% of people tested had glyphosate. This is the herbicide that is used ubiquitously. It's one of the biggest selling herbicides on the planet. 84% of Americans had traces of glyphosate in their urine. Okay. And it
Wow.
does you absolutely no good because as well as being a herbicide, it also has an antibacterial element. So if you're eating food with glyphosate on it, which is not organic or regeneratively grown or doesn't come from Mr. Jones down the road who grows his own unsprayed crops, then you will be negatively affecting your microbiome, and
Mhm.
your microbiome is linked to gut health. Maybe you'll be predisposed to leaky gut, IBD. Your microbiome is one of the foundations for your immune system. Your microbiome links directly to mental health, the gut brain axis. And so I think that if we can, where possible, move away from foods which have been sprayed, that's more difficult in the States than it is in Europe. But even in Europe, you've got to be pretty canny to do it. But you guys are switched on. You know about food and the benefit of food, and you probably have an inkling of glyphosate. But I'm telling you, it is the work of the devil, and should be avoided where at all possible. Sometimes you just can't tell. So just go for the cleanest you possibly can.
Well, someone did ask a question. We were talking about nuts and seeds and such about feeding organic, which we'll circle back to. But I saw a
Sure.
post this morning from a mutual friend, Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet
Right.
doctor, and she
Yeah.
says she's got this photo of a bowl of Cheerios. I don't know who eats Cheerios anymore, but people do. And it said
millions do, Ruby.
It said that just because the food is non-GMO doesn't mean that it doesn't have glyphosates, and that's so eye-opening for so many people, because for years that was the key term, right? Non-GMO, we don't want GMO, but really what has the bigger side effect on our food?
Yeah, totally. GMO refers to the genes, yeah, deep within each cell, within the food that was grown to produce the food-like product like Cheerios. Okay, that's technically how they're known within the system. Food-like product. That's to do with the genes. What you spray on the outside of those plants is a whole other ballgame.
That's right.
So Katie Woodley, as usual, is bang on the money there. Very much so.
Yep. So we can dive into these questions. Did I cut you off before you finished the end of that food things to avoid list?
No, I just made a short list because I knew we'd have 20 times more stuff to talk about than we'd actually get through. So I didn't want to frustrate anyone.
Let's talk about that organic foods if possible. Is that
Let's
what we're
totally do
aiming
this,
for?
and let's get into this more when we get to San Diego. This is really, really important. Organic is the base layer. That's the lowest that the farm should ever go. Okay, it used to be what we strove for, but now there are many people who are doing regenerative agriculture. They're doing kind of non-sprayed agriculture, and that's where we need to be. So the minimum baseline is organic. Now, God bless those who cannot afford to feed themselves properly, let alone go the extra mile for the organic. Okay, I can't speak to those people, but where we have the means to achieve unsprayed or in any way not exposed to the pesticides, the herbicides, the fungicides, the molluscicides, all these things will go on, and they will do their utmost not to tell you. Either the farmer doesn't want to tell you, or the farmer may be happy to, but the corporation who bought the commodity isn't happy to tell you. So I think we just have to be as careful as possible. And for me, organic is the bare minimum, absolute bare minimum.
Yep. I agree. And I think it is harder in some places, depending on where you live in the world, but it's a buyer's world right now. So the more the consumer demands from these manufacturers, the more they're going to want to figure out a way to produce food that we want to consume and to feed our dogs as well.
Leverage the corporations with your buying dollar. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. So Sagar says, how do you use the herbs? Sagar, this is the easiest thing in the world. Even you and I could do this. You get your herbs, you put them into the blender, zzz, you're done. Okay, that's it. You're going to say how much quantity. If you've got a big dog, then you'd be thinking about a big handful. If you've got a small dog, you're thinking about a small kind of pinch of whatever it might be. Yeah, if you take a pinch of herb, most of that is going to be fresh air. Yeah, in between the leaves of the herb. Herbs, the simple basic culinary herbs are non-toxic. We're thinking basil there. So parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme are my go-to, because that everybody thinks, oh yeah, I get those. But you could think of oregano. You would say you'd be thinking of mint. You'd be thinking, yeah, you can go from A to Z. And there's some wonderful cilantro. We'd call it coriander. Yeah, think big. And if your dog hates it, don't use it. Yeah, if you put coriander, cilantro into the food, and the dog goes, whoa, too much. Well, you've learned something. So you just avoid that. Or maybe you just put a tiny bit in a couple of weeks later. Yeah. As kids, unless you grew up with these herbs, then you are not familiar with these interesting new flavors and the essential oils that make up those flavors. So if you are introducing herbs and you've got a dog who's pretty fussy, just start with just minute quantities, and then the next day 2 minute quantities, and then 3, 4, 5. Okay, gently does it. Remember the cycles of nature. Let's play that game. That's how we really want to move forward there.
And, we are huge proponents of making your dog's food at home on a budget. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Earlier in our talk, you said, you can steam your veggies, put them in the blender, throw your herbs in there as well. Mix it all together. Make a nice little mix that you're feeding for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Make it
Don't
simple.
think you've got to, every single meal, sprinkle it on top. You can make it easy.
Yeah, use your freezer. The other thing is bone broth. Yeah, if it's a really fantastic addition. Make some bone broth and put it into bag, put it in the freezer. You're good to go. There are very few conditions. Okay, so we're talking puppies. It's good for young dogs. It's great for pregnant bitches. It's good for seniors. It's good for absolutely. It's post-op recovery. It's good for transitioning from kibble to raw. It's good from transitioning from raw A to raw B to raw C. It's one of those universal. If in doubt, bone broth is probably one of the answers.
Yeah. And the nice thing is everything that you've mentioned so far, these are all foods that we can consume ourselves. So we're not really going out of our way, right? Just buy things specifically for our dog's diet. We can share all of these things.
Totally. Okay. So Kay says, what about eggs? And eggs are good. I've got a number of patients who cannot take chicken, but can take eggs, and vice versa. Okay. It doesn't entirely make sense, but I'm just the vet, it's a little bit like when our kids were breastfeeding. I asked the midwife, what happens if Ellie has a curry? She's half Indonesian, so we have a lot of curries. Is that going to affect the child? And they said, no, of course not. Guess what? It totally affects the child. Okay, so there are complications within food which you don't need to worry about at this stage. We've got San Diego to go through all this stuff if you like. That would be quite a nice talk, actually, talking about when is food not food. When make a note. We can talk about whatever you like. As you can see, I can talk about anything. So eggs, yes, good. Can you feed them raw? Yes, you can feed them raw. Had a chat with Karen Becker and Rodney Habib, and we came to the conclusion that if you have the time to soft boil them, that's probably the best, because there are you maintain the vitamin B12 within the yolk and some of the nutrients there, because you haven't cooked it, you haven't changed the liquidity of the protein, but you have denatured some of the less beneficial proteins within the white. So if you do a soft boiled egg and give it to the dog, they'll think it's their birthday. So I'm good with the eggs.
Yeah. What is the reason why a dog with a chicken intolerance wouldn't have an intolerance to eggs?
Well, it's a bit like tripe. It's a great question, Sagar. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's a bit like tripe. I've got dogs who are intolerant of beef but can do great on beef tripe. We don't know very much about nutrition is the bottom line. Yeah. Sure. So what I say, Sagar, is read the dog, not the textbooks. Okay.
I love that. Oh, that's going to be your quote up. on the wall. At the summit, we always put quotes from our speakers, and I think
Okay.
that's my favorite one so far. Read the
Okay.
dog, not the textbook.
Okay.
Still on the top of eggs, because that is, as we always refer to, a complete food, but they can be higher in calories. How do you add those to a toy dog's diet without causing weight gain or excessive calories?
What I say is that for a toy dog, well, for all dogs, I'd be looking at 2 to 3% of body weight. Some people say that's excessively simplistic, but I say it's a great place to start.
Sure.
And if your dog, so you make up a nicely balanced meal, and then the next day you make up another nicely balanced meal, it may not be complete, but it doesn't matter, because what you may miss out on a Monday, you get in on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday. And so that over a while, the diet is complete. Each meal may not be. And let's face it, that's how humans eat.
That's
And
right.
that's how most mammals all around the world eat. Okay. The only animals on the planet that eat complete and balanced meals are those, unfortunately, eating, the hills, the royal canins, the eukanumas of this world, because there's some idea that every single meal has to be balanced,
Sure.
which has never happened in history before until Rust and Purina in 1956. Yeah. Then all they could do was make sure it was balanced, because otherwise they'd get deficiency disease. But because we're not feeding exactly the same thing every single day, that's very, very rare.
Sure.
Coming back to the question, so I with toys or any dogs, I will start with 2 to 3% of body weight. And so for the tiny little guys, you'd start with maybe 2% of body weight. And if they're getting a little bit, if they're putting on weight, you just take it down a tiny bit. Yeah. And if they're getting a bit skinny, you take it up a little bit. Again, read the dog, not the textbook.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I think another more practical tip that I might have for that, soft boiling the egg is really,
Uh-huh.
really helpful, because, if you got a raw egg, you can't split that up into 8 pieces. But if it's
For
soft,
toy, yeah.
yeah, if it's a soft boiled, or even, medium,
Even
we'll
even
say,
medium, or yeah,
yeah, where the
medium,
yolk is
even
a little
hard
bit.
boiled. Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, yeah,
Chop
yeah.
it up, and then you can split that over the week. Toy breeds are just, they're so funny to me when I've got a 150-pound dog. So anything under 10 is just, it's not real.
For sure. But the thing with toy dogs is basically you'd make up a week's worth of food and you'd put one egg in it, and it would then subdivide into 7, because you
Yes,
divide it into 7 meals or 14 meals. Okay. So there are ways and means of feeding these guys. Basically, you feed them the same as everybody else, because they have the same genetic stock as the grey wolf back in the day. There's been minor changes. Axelson 2012 in Nature, but that's I've got questions with that paper.
you'll have to send that over to me. I'm not familiar. Um,
Oh, okay.
all right, this is our last question, and
Mhm.
Sagar did say that you are pronouncing his name correctly. So would
Yay!
a capsule be better for the fish or krill oil, better than the glass
Yeah,
bottles?
if you can get really fresh stuff, then using a bottle, and you either pour it or you go, you have a pump, then that's cool, because you're keeping it in the fridge. You're only using a month's worth. Yeah, you get enough for 1 month, and then you start again at the beginning of the next month with another type of thing. But the other way around that is using capsules, if they're from a great provider, where you know that the product is not uh, oxidized when it goes into the capsule. It just means the capsule uh, protects from oxidation. Plus, it's really easy, yeah, because it's going to be one per 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 10
Mhm.
kilos, what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever works, Sagar. Read the dog, not the textbook.
Yeah, I have a preference for fresh fish, adding the
Mm-hmm.
small oily fish into the diet. But early on, my dog had a preference for not raw. He preferred dried. He wanted
Yep.
our single ingredient dried fish treats, and that
Yeah.
worked just as well.
That does work just as well. And also just, even tinned, you can get tinned sardines and mackerel and what have you. Anchovies are a bit salty, so I wouldn't go there. But you can just get tins of sardines and you keep 20 in the cupboard for
Right.
when you run out of food. Okay, here's a meal of sardines. What's very beneficial, it's a great way to feed fish oil. Some dogs don't like fish though, so you
Right.
got to find that balance. I would definitely be giving sardines as part of the diet twice a week.
Agreed. And I am
Super
doing that
healthy.
for myself.
Mhm.
I am, for those of you who are in here that don't know, I am expecting our first child in April, and the omega-3 um, supplement industry for pregnant women is insane. It's just like you have to add it, otherwise your baby's brain isn't going to develop properly. And I'm like, can I just eat fish? Like, would that be okay with everyone?
Yep, low mercury fish is totally a great thing to do, and as much organ meat as possible. If you can bear it,
Yeah,
liver and kidney and stuff like that, you just can't go wrong with all of that. For the vitamin
absolutely.
D, for the zinc, and all the magnesium, all the amazing nutrients that you get there. That would be my top tip for anybody who's gestating.
Yes. Grass-fed liver and
Grass fed, not even
sardine.
grass fed, pasture fed.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, great recommendations. I think yep, we've reached our hour mark. I knew we would do this. I know we would go
Oh,
over
we've
time and
gone over in a really big way, but that's okay. It's nice to
yeah,
break rules,
it
Ruby.
is. And I do want to have you back here again before October. Also want to invite everyone that joined us today to join us at the Feed Real Summit this October in San Diego. Dr. Nick is going to be there and speaking on one of these amazing topics. I really liked, I've already forgotten the when food is not food. That was the
When food
topic.
is not food, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
We can do that.
I love that. And so we're going to have a lot of amazing speakers there. Dr. Connor Brady is going to be traveling with you from the UK stateside. We've got Dr. Karen Becker, Rodney Habib. Is this going to be your first time meeting Rodney in person?
Nope, I've met them both in
Oh, you have.
2015. Yeah,
Ah, okay.
crazy cats that they are. Yeah, love them, love them.
We've got Angela Ardolino and Amy Renz and a few more speakers to come
Mm, mm.
that we haven't quite announced yet, but would love to have you all there. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nick. And let me just put in your website. Should you want to do some sort of consultation with Nick, he does offer them internationally online. So these are the places that you can reach him. You had one more. Just before we end, just wanted to say I've been a huge fan of Dr. Nick Thompson since his reply to BBC's Trust Me, I'm a Vet episode. Wow. You were
Wow.
on BBC?
That was I know I gave a reply because the BBC came out with something and I was so incensed. Many thanks to whoever that was. I just, you know what? It's before I got set up with my camera and I've got lights and I've got a super duper camera, I've got a microphone and everything here. I perched on the bed because it was the only quiet room in the house. I had a box in front of me and I couldn't move on the bed because otherwise the phone would go like this, and I just had like a 12-minute rant into the phone. So whoever that is who
Caught that
said that, it's
episode?
very kind. I really appreciate that. I could tell you I could rant at mainstream media pretty much all day long these days.
Yeah, I saw a snippet of a little podcast that you did on vegan diets, and maybe that's the next thing we ought to talk about.
We can go there. Well, when food is not food. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Listen, you tell me, we can make something. There's just, Ruby, that's the beauty of this subject, is it's so rich. There's so much. It's an ocean of information, and the more you swim, the more ground you cover, the more you realize there's a whole lot of ocean out there, which is great. you know, I want to, every day's a school day, and long may it continue.
Yes, very much looking forward to it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in on this Monday morning here, or evening, wherever you are in the world. We will catch you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.